Dozens of countries have condemned Russia's warning that foreign diplomats should leave Kyiv before it launches another massive attack on the city.
Russia just warned diplomats to flee Kyiv while NATO confirms repeated airspace breaches. Russia signals massive retaliation. NATO raises alarms and diplomacy collapses as fears of a wider European conflict intensify.
My building was shaking, many other buildings in central Kyiv was shaking. We could hear air defense at work as well as impacts. But on the other hand, air alerts and threats to residents of Kyiv are nothing new. They were asked to take them more seriously overnight, especially with the missile threat, and many people will.
Nobody expected Russia to say this part out loud. Not quietly behind closed doors. Not through leaks. Directly. Publicly. Moscow suddenly warned diplomats and foreign citizens to leave Kyiv immediately as officials announced what they called systematic strikes were about to begin. And for a second, it felt like something much bigger was coming. According to Russia's foreign ministry, these strikes would target military-industrial facilities and what they called decision-making centers inside the Ukrainian capital. That wording instantly triggered alarms across Europe because it sounded far more aggressive than previous warnings. And then, reports started surfacing that Sergei Lavrov personally informed Marco Rubio about the incoming attacks. Russia claims this escalation came after deadly strikes in occupied Luhansk. But here's where things got tense fast. European diplomats refused to leave Kyiv. EU officials openly accused Moscow of trying to spread panic and pressure Western governments into backing down. Instead of evacuating, many embassies stayed exactly where they were. And honestly, that standoff may have revealed something important. Neither side looks willing to blink anymore.
Рядом с общежитием нет. Поэтому говорить о том, что снаряды поразили здание под действием наших средств ПВО, радиоэлектронной борьбы, нет никаких оснований. Никто не может сказать, что пытались поразить какой-то объект, а БПЛА были сбиты нашими же средствами и случайно якобы попали в это здание.
Russia says everything changed after a strike hit a university dormitory building in occupied Luhansk. Moscow claimed students and young women were killed when Ukrainian drones or missiles slammed into the area. Russian media immediately framed it as proof Ukraine was targeting civilians deep behind the lines. But then, Ukraine pushed back hard. Kyiv denied deliberately targeting civilians and insisted the strike was aimed at military infrastructure allegedly operating nearby. And this is where the information war exploded again. Russia called it terrorism. Ukraine called it propaganda. Both sides started using the same event to justify completely opposite narratives. And honestly, that's become one of the most dangerous parts of this war. Every strike now becomes fuel for the next escalation. And this is where things got insane. Russia followed the warning with one of the heaviest bombardments seen in months. Hundreds of drones, cruise missiles, ballistic weapons. And then reports emerged that Moscow may have used the Oreshnik hypersonic missile again, one of Russia's newest strategic weapons. What makes hypersonic missiles different is not just speed, it's unpredictable. These weapons travel so fast and maneuver so aggressively that air defense systems struggle to react in time. That alone changes the psychological pressure completely. Suddenly, cities are dealing with weapons that defenders may only detect seconds before impact. But here's what really stood out. Russia warned diplomats beforehand. That wasn't random, it looked calculated. Almost like Moscow wanted fear to spread before the missiles even launched. A message to Ukraine. A message to NATO, maybe even a message to Washington. And now, many analysts fear these strikes may only be the beginning of something larger. But while Kyiv was preparing for more attacks, another problem was growing fast. NATO officials reportedly received evidence showing drones repeatedly entering alliance airspace. And suddenly, this stopped being just about Ukraine. Reports pointed toward incidents near Romania and parts of the Baltic region where unidentified drones crossed borders or forced military responses. NATO fighter jets were scrambled multiple times as tensions kept climbing. And honestly, this is the kind of situation military planners fear the most because one mistake can change everything. Imagine being a pilot responding to an unknown drone entering NATO territory in the middle of an active regional war. You have seconds to decide whether it's surveillance, a navigation error, or something far worse. That pressure is enormous, And every new incursion increases the risk of accidental escalation between Russia and NATO forces. Now hold on, because the bigger concern isn't even the drones themselves. It's a deterrent. NATO cannot appear weak if its airspace keeps getting violated. But stronger responses also increase confrontation risks. That's the trap. And right now, Europe feels stuck directly in the middle of it. This next part may matter even more. Some officials now fear repeated incursions are testing NATO reactions in real time. Not necessarily preparing for war tomorrow, but measuring hesitation, response speed, and political unity. And if that's true, this situation could become far more dangerous than people realize. But Ukraine wasn't sitting back waiting for the next Russian barrage. Far from it. Ukrainian forces kept launching drone operations deep behind Russian lines, hitting logistics routes, fuel points, and military supply vehicles. And then footage from the Kursk region started spreading online, showing strikes landing with surprising precision. Some of those attacks reportedly involved French-supplied guided bombs dropped from Ukrainian aircraft. That matters because it shows Kyiv is mixing Western weapons with rapidly evolving drone warfare tactics. And honestly, this war is starting to look completely different from how it did 2 years ago. Ukraine's drone capabilities have expanded fast. Small drones, long-range drones, coordinated attacks. Supply convoys that once moved safely behind the front are now constantly under threat. And that creates pressure Russia can't ignore because logistics win wars. If roads, fuel, and transport networks keep getting disrupted, troop movement slows down, reinforcements get delayed, and suddenly even territory far from the front line no longer feels secure. And then, one piece of footage changed the mood completely. A Shahed-style drone was seen flying low over the Kyiv region before clipping power lines and crashing directly into a residential area. The video spread everywhere because it captured something terrifyingly real. Not soldiers, not trenches, just ordinary homes suddenly becoming targets. For civilians, these overnight drone barrages create constant psychological pressure. You hear engines in the dark, air raid sirens, explosions somewhere nearby, and you don't know if the next drone is heading toward military infrastructure or your street. This is how drone warfare has changed urban combat. Cities no longer sleep normally during wartime. Attacks can happen at any hour with little warning. And lately, the frequency of these nightly barrages appears to be increasing across multiple regions of Ukraine.
What we have tried to do in this entire process, and let's be clear about this. I mean, the United States is engaged in this. The president says this, and I'll translate what I think he's trying to say to you in all of this, and I think he's been pretty clear about it, is it's not our war, it's a war in another continent. We have equities, we have engagement in this war, but it's not our war per se. But we have been told by everybody, I think everybody would agree, that there's only one nation on earth, there's only one entity on earth that can actually talk to both sides and figure out whether there's a way to end this war peacefully. And that's the United States. And we've invested a lot of time, a lot of energy at the highest levels of our government. I believe, President Trump has had more meetings with foreign leaders and others on the war in Ukraine than on any other subject, including trade.
But here's the part that may worry diplomats the most. Even Washington now sounds uncertain about where this is heading. Marco Rubio openly admitted negotiations are not producing meaningful progress, despite months of attempts to bring both sides toward a settlement. The United States positioned itself as one of the few countries capable of talking to both Moscow and Kyiv. That mediator role became central to recent discussions. But Rubio basically acknowledged something many already suspected. The gap between both sides remains enormous. And right now, neither side appears ready to compromise. He also made another important point. Rubio said this war likely cannot end through a traditional military victory. That line stood out because it reflects how deeply entrenched the conflict has become. Russia still believes pressure and escalation can force concessions. Ukraine believes continued resistance is the only option. And somewhere in the middle, diplomacy keeps collapsing. Now hold on, because this is where things become dangerous. While officials talk about negotiations publicly, battlefield escalation keeps accelerating in the background. Bigger strikes, more drones, more threats, more red lines. The political language sounds diplomatic, but the military reality looks completely different. And honestly, that usually signals a prolonged conflict ahead. Talks freeze while both sides prepare for even harder phases of war. And this question is now hanging over Europe more than ever. Are these incidents slowly pushing NATO closer to direct confrontation with Russia? Because once drones start repeatedly entering alliance airspace, every future mistake carries enormous consequences. European officials viewed Russia's embassy evacuation warning as more than just military messaging. Many saw it as intimidation, a calculated attempt to pressure governments and create fear across the continent. At the same time, tensions around the Baltic region continue rising as NATO increases patrols and Russia keeps testing boundaries. The real danger is miscalculation. One drone, one missile, one interception gone wrong. That's all it takes. Imagine an accidental strike landing inside NATO territory during one of these overnight attacks. Suddenly, leaders would face pressure to respond immediately. And honestly, nobody fully knows where that escalation ladder ends once both sides start climbing it. Right now, nobody can say exactly what comes next. Russia may be preparing even larger strikes after publicly warning Kyiv. NATO is already monitoring airspace aggressively as concerns over drone incursions continue growing, and Ukraine shows no signs of slowing its own attacks behind Russian lines. At the same time, peace negotiations remain stalled with little visible progress. That leaves the entire conflict stuck in a dangerous cycle where every retaliation creates another reason for escalation. And this may be the most worrying part of all. The escalation cycles are speeding up. Russia's warnings, NATO airspace incidents, and collapsing diplomacy are creating one of the most dangerous moments of the war so far. Whether this becomes another escalation cycle or the beginning of a broader confrontation now depends on decisions made in Moscow, Kyiv, Washington, and Brussels over the coming days.